Welcome to another broadcast of Cowgirl Logic. This program is part 2 of journaling and how journaling opens our ears up to hear God and to begin to not just hear God, but to begin to engage with Him in what you hear. Because if you're just going on knowledge, just gaining knowledge, that doesn't give you authority. Authority doesn't come with just knowledge. Authority comes with activating and stepping into that knowledge and living accordingly. Like rodeo and like bull riding. You can know all about how to position your body on the bull, how to set your rope, how to do all of this stuff. But unless you get on and start riding, you don't have authority. You just got knowledge. And so many Christians are satisfied with knowledge because we think that's authority. It is not. Authority only comes when you begin to step in the knowledge that you've learned. Journaling helps do that. It's an easy, simple way to start engaging God. Date it, set it back, and then later on you can check whether that word was right or whether it was wrong, whether you heard accurately from God. If He says something to do something and then you do it, nobody's judging you. We're going to miss it a bunch, but how in the world are you going to learn to walk or ride a horse unless you go through the issues of falling down and getting it wrong? Today, I hate to take you back to the classroom, but you're going back to the classroom in this program while I'm out here with Mr. Strider having a wonderful day. I hope you enjoy this broadcast.
I love to talk about the victories, but in between the victories, I really don't want to tell you about the hundreds of absolute failures, but we learn through that. But my mother, raised in the Ozarks, southern Missouri, there was areas to where you had, tornadoes and stuff come through. We lived down in this river valley and surrounded on both sides by big hills, and you could hear a tornado coming because it does sound like a train. And hail will usually advance first and stuff, and you hear that sound, sounds like a train. And I remember seeing my mom. She'd step out on the porch, and you could see that tornado at the top. We saw it at the top of the hill, and here it was coming. And she stood there, and she stepped outside on this one like a crazy woman. It's hailing. Chickens are going, apes nerd. And she steps outside and she said, "You will not drop down into this valley. I command you in the name of Jesus, you cannot drop down into this valley. You go on over to the top of that other hill." Nobody lived over there. It was just woods. And she said, "You go on." And I stood there and went, wow, no wonder I'm scared of my mama. And the coolest thing, when you see that and you grow up in that, it becomes natural to you. And the sad thing is, a lot of us haven't been raised in good stuff, and bad stuff is natural, and we have to be pulled out of all of us have got a lot of that. But anyway, there was a lot of years that I did what we lovingly called midnight service at the Texas State High School Rodeo Finals. Okay, it was always held in Abilene. Got a lot of big arenas and stuff there, and the main event that night was done in the Coliseum, and we called it midnight mass because you never got to have the church service until the perf was over, and it was midnight before that ever happened. And so anyway, we're getting all ready, and the news comes that sirens are going off, and they said there's a tornado coming straight, a big one, straight for Abilene. And so they told the horses that's in the barns, everybody is, and all the trailers out there on flat level ground. It's like it's going to hit a trailer park. It's going to be bad. And they said, all the people, get out of your trailers, get over here and get down in the floor of the arena, because that was the safest place, the lowest place with no windows and things like that. And they were calling them in. And so preachers were telling me, you want to just cut this off. And I'm like, heck no, this is an evangelistic setup here. Because you had hundreds now of people coming in and they're scared they might die. This is a dream. And so anyway, we're, ready for that. But then you remember, and I mean, not even a doubt. I just said, those of you who believe with me, start talking out loud with me. And why I said it the way I did, I don't know, but I don't know why. But I said, in the name of Jesus, I command that tornado. You have to stop at city limits. You cannot come into this city. You just rise up, separate, and go across on the other side of the city, and you can land in a field and go on. But you are not allowed to come within city limits. I mean, not just our arena, not just our way, but this entire city. You can't touch it in Jesus' name. And so nothing happened. So then you get to bring the message, and a ton of people raised their hands to get saved. However that lasted, I don't know, but they were serious right at the moment. You want to go to heaven when you die? Which is really not a great way of saying it, but anyway. Anyway, and we went on, and the tornado didn't come. And so you could think, well, it just went somewhere else. Somebody, I didn't get to see it, but somebody told me, they said, oh my gosh, did you see the 6 o'clock, the morning news? And no. And they said, they showed it on the radar. They said, we don't understand this. Here comes the tornado. They said right at the city limits, it went up, split, went outside the city limits, came back together on the other side of the city and touched down in fields and never heard a thing. So talk about a witness to everybody that was there. So what I'm sorry, that's kind of off of journaling. I apologize. But the whole thing is, look, while we're journaling, we're seeking to hear from that kingdom realm and get used to hearing from the kingdom realm, to where it's not just some oddball thing that happens every time when all the sequences come together well, but we begin to train our senses to hear the voice of the Spirit and to remember it, write it down or whatever, but you begin receiving from God isn't an oddball thing anymore. It needs to be as natural as hearing somebody else, my voice right now. And it will get that way, and journaling helps that. But let me go on. He says, and I give unto you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatsoever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven. Whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. In other words, whatever God doesn't allow in heaven, I cannot allow here. So does God have tornadoes tearing through the heavenly homes? Okay, then. Girls, let's don't let another one hit around us. And it doesn't even have to be around us. If God talks to you, poor Oklahoma, Tornado Alley, man. And God needs to raise up some Christians in Oklahoma that says, not on my watch. Not on my watch. You have no right to land here anymore, because it's okay. So I want to be like that. Don't you want to be like that? Journaling is a part of that. Now, okay. What I want to do is in 1 Corinthians chapter 2 that we already looked at, to where he says, eyes not seen, neither is ear heard, neither has it, what God is going to do. It's the but he says, but you can hear it. If you could hear it, receive it in the Spirit, right? Okay, now let's look at the opposite of that. Turn to Matthew 25. And the opposite of that is, just what we read there, to link it to Matthew 16, where the Lord said, Peter, you didn't get that information from this realm. Okay, now let's look at the opposite of that, because I want to bring in something that you might not have ever thought about before, that you could say, well, I don't know if it's got anything to do with journaling or not, but let me bring it in anyway. Okay. And then we are gonna journal, and we're gonna do some experimenting here. When you read in Matthew 25, and I'm not going to take time to read it, but you start at verse 14, and it talks about the talents. And it's literally a picture of the Lord giving out things that he wants. You have talents. It means talents like that, but it's also money that you have. It's in that sense, it's money, and it's to be invested. But whatever God put in you, it's to be invested back towards the kingdom. Okay, so we see there where what is it? 3 servants. He called his servants, and he gave 5, and one he gave 2, and one he gave 1. Right? And when they came, the 5 said, I have invested it and got 5 more. He said, well done, thou good and faithful servant. Enter into the joy of the Lord. And now this one, I will make you ruler over many things. Okay. Enter into the joy of the Lord. And the 2, he says, I've received 2 more. He said, well done. He didn't say, well, you didn't do as good as the first one. No, he did exactly. He multiplied what he had. And now this is where I'm going. Verse 24. And then he that had received the 1 talent came and said, listen to this, Lord, I knew you. I know you, Lord. You're a hard man, reaping where you've not sown. Did he get that information from the kingdom? Is that true about God? It's not true about God at all. So what he's doing is he took the things of God, but he never spent time to open himself up and say, here I am, Lord. I want to hear from you. I want to receive from you. And I got my journal, and I'm going to quiet myself from the chaotic mess of this world that I'm living in, and I want to hear what you say about this, right? I want to know you exactly, because listen, how can you know someone if you don't have any communication? If you don't have any, it's like they say, after you've been married to somebody for a while and stuff, you could be in a room full of a lot of people, and if they come in and they say something and you hear, you'll know, whoa, that's my husband or that's my wife way over there. How did you know that? Because you spend time with them. But everybody else's voice you don't pick up like that. In other words, same thing. Luke chapter 2. Where was Jesus born? It was wherever room was made. However humble the situation was, room was made in a barn, or it wasn't a barn back then, but it was like a barn, cave thing. Room was made in a smelly, goat manured place. And the king came there. Because why? Talk to me. Because they made room. There was room there. Okay, so you think God won't come talk to you? If he would have the King of Glory born in a goat shed, because room was made, when you set your journaling aside and you say, Lord, I want to hear from you, I want to know you, he's going to come. Well, I might not qualify. I'm not that great of a, doesn't have anything to do. Did you make room for him? Then he'll come. Then he'll come. All right, you do it, he'll come. You build it, and they will come. You make room, and he will come. Okay, so this guy, Lord, I knew you that you're a hard man, reaping where you have not sown. Boy, he's a stingy wad, ain't he? And gathering where you have not strewn. In other words, if I invest this, you didn't invest it, so I don't want to give you the benefits of it. In other words, I want to own all of this. That's a person definitely not a tither right there. I heard somebody say, I thought about the other day, and they got salt out of the shaker, and it was just given a little bit. It said, dadgum salt shaker. It's just a tither. It only wants to give you 10%. Okay, verse 25. He says, I know you, God, and I was afraid. Now we're, to have the fear of the Lord, but that ain't the right kind right there. Does he know God? No. Has he been listening to the voice of the Lord? Not at all. I want you to see what's going to happen to this guy. So Lord goes on down and says, take what's from him, give it to the guy that's got the most. Verse 30. And cast ye the unprofitable servant. He did not say he wasn't a servant. He's still a servant. He is still calling him a servant. People think this is going to hell. This is not going to hell. Outer darkness is not hell. And cast ye the unprofitable servant into outer darkness, and there shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Now I looked up that word unprofitable, and in the concordance, and it says, one who is set aside because he is no more useful. All right, now what was wrong with that dude? What was wrong with him was he took the talents from God. He's born again. Say, for instance, he's saved. He's got gifts of God in him. And instead of investing those gifts, he just tucks them away and hides them. And he goes about life living on this lower level of thinking through just logic and everything else. And so is he making room for the light of the kingdom of heaven to come in? Okay, get this. Whatsoever a man sows, that shall he also reap. Okay, was he making room for the light of God to come in? No. So what did he reap? Darkness. What did it mean? That's hell? No, there's coming a time even now to where God, he speaks to us and he draws us in, and we answer that call and we make room for him, and he gives us more light. And then we get hungry for more and we get excited about it and we make room and he gives us more light. But people that refuse that and reject that stay in an area of doing all their thinking from a lower level, from this worldly physical level. And there's coming a time to where when they need to have the light of God, they'll not have it. Outer darkness. In other words, God hasn't left, but he's not shining on them anymore. Because why? They're an unprofitable servant. One who has been set aside is no longer useful. Look, you don't have to turn there, but you can write it down if you want. Luke chapter 21, verse, is it 26 or I'm not real sure. Did I write it even down? Yeah, it's 26. Luke 26. When Jesus, they asked Jesus, Luke 21, 26. Chapter 21, verse 26. Okay, where they asked the Lord, what about these end times? When is this going to happen to the temple, and when is the coming? And he gives a whole lot of signs from both questions, because both are two different areas. Okay? And then he says in verse 26, he said, men's hearts failing them for fear. Why? Because of looking at what's happening where? In the heavenlies or on the earth? On the earth. Because their mind, the knowledge that they're receiving from is earthbound. If the knowledge that we receive from is only earthbound, I promise you, you will deal with depression and fear the whole time. You want to get out of depression and fear? Go and spend time with the Lord and make it a habit. It's not going to happen just overnight. You make it a habit. You set time aside. You make room for the King. He brings in his light, and you begin to understand what he's doing in the earth. And the news media is 100 years behind. They are so far behind, and they're lying about what they got anyway. And so if you think you're going to get truth from the news media, you're dumber than you look. Because yeah. I mean, we can see what's going on. I mean, like some things that's happened here in your state here in a little bit. I'm not talking about just hiding your head under a rock, but I'm saying that is not what decides what God is doing in this state or in my country. That is not, they haven't got the ear of God. They haven't been like Jacob, who went and laid his head on the rock and got the vision from heaven of what God was doing. I want to lay my head on the rock, and I want to hear from the kingdom of heaven. And I have my journal, and I'm going to date it and write it down. And then when everything around you is going the opposite of that, no, I got a word from God. I got a word from God. What's he's going to do in 2016, before the election. I didn't know anything about Donald John Trump, not a thing. All I knew is that he was a very rich businessman. Okay, that's all I knew. I never watched the program that he was in. I didn't have any preconceived ideas, good or bad. Didn't have anything. All I knew is Hillary was not God's choice. I mean, you know, you'd be dumber than a bucket of rocks, and you ought to know that one. and all. And that's what will make some people mad. But you know what? You need to be mad, I guess. Anyway, so I went to the Lord and well, no, so, I'm sorry. I was more haughty than that. I thought, well, shoot, I don't even have to go. I mean, I'm like, it's obvious, man. It's going to be the Texas guy, huh? Um, all of a sudden, I'm not even thinking Ted Cruz. I was like, so preliminaries, I voted for Ted Cruz. Didn't know nothing about Trump. Ted Cruz, I'm like, well, in the preliminaries, he circled the toilet really quick. And so I'm going, okay, maybe I ought to go and find out what God says. Because obviously what I thought was not God's thoughts. He said, my thoughts are higher than your thoughts. So I went before the Lord, and let me tell you what God showed me. He was so awesome, and it has stuck with me all these years since 2016. And when people are all afraid about our nation going to hell in a handbasket, I'm like, I have absolutely not one fear. Not one. Don't mean I can sit on my haunches and just not do anything. But the thing is, I have no fear because God showed me what he was going to do. And then Lance Wallnall come out with the thing that the Lord said he's a Cyrus in Isaiah 45, and that went along with everything that I saw. And that was another confirmation where you read about Cyrus in Isaiah 45, and you can see that Trump has not only he's fulfilled a huge part of that already. But anyway, what I saw was, well, the Lord spoke to me, and he talks to you where you are. And I have liked World War II history. And the Lord said, he is a political Patton. He said, and I didn't know anything about the man, but boy, that's pretty accurate description right there. He said he's like a Patton in politics. He said they ain't gonna be able to predict what he does, and he's gonna move so fast and do these things, and the evil on this will hate him. And he said because they won't be able to control him. And he said he's my man, and he's gonna do what I tell him. I don't care how many Christians say he's a nasty man. Just shut your mouth up. Because David was a screw up too. And so was Samson. And so was Peter. How haughty can we get that we're going to think God can't use somebody if they're not all nicety nice? We didn't need a nice preacher out there. We needed a warrior. We needed a street fighter. And we needed a businessman. So anyway. And besides that, he who is without sin cast the first dadgum stone. How many of any of us here want to have our past brought up to judge us of where we are today? I don't want that. Do you? Then don't bring his up neither. Because the man has come to an encounter with God. But that's not the issue. The issue is he is called for this time and God is filled. Well, anyway, the Lord said he'll be like a Patton. And the Lord said, and I saw it in a vision. I saw like an old 1-point bottom plow going deep into the ground, pulling up huge roots, ripping them. And you could hear them popping and exposing these roots. And the Lord said, the evil has gotten so deeply rooted, he's going to expose and it will be judged in this land. And he said, and then I saw like right down the middle of America, like unzipping a jacket. And he said, and it will cause a division in America. And I was like, oh. And he said, no. He said, it's good. He said, it's like a cancer patient being laid in the operating table. You got to open them up to remove the cancer to save the life. He said, there's a division, but it'll open up America. I will remove the evil, and America will come back together and be stronger than she's ever been before, ever in her existence. So it doesn't matter how many people think I'm retarded by saying that. I know that I heard from the Lord and some other things. Okay? The point being again, and I journaled all that. Anytime I go to Doubting It, I can go back and look at that and see how God, everything we've gone through is what he showed me is exactly. And there was two other things he showed me. Okay, but where I wanted to close this out, and I wanted to not forget something. Uh, okay, so let me look one more thing here. Galatians 4, and I want to see if this is worth bringing up because I didn't write down what it was. Galatians 4. Yeah. Oh, yeah. This is a good one. Galatians 4, chapter 4, verse 9. But now, after that you have known God, or rather you are known of God, how turn ye again to the weak and beggarly elements whereunto you desire again to be in bondage? You can look up that word elements, and it literally means earthly. Why are you turning your knowledge to earth knowledge? He said, do you want to be in bondage again? Only getting my knowledge from this lower level will put me in bondage. You'll be bound. You'll be limited at very best. Yes, Jesus loves you. Yes, you'll go to heaven. Yes, all this stuff. But will you be powerful? No. Will you unleash heavenly things into this realm if you're not receiving from heaven? Just because I'm saved doesn't mean just because I'm saved doesn't mean all of that's going to fall on me like ripe apples off a tree. I got to make room. Journaling is a piece of that. So I get up in the morning before I get busy. It's easier now because my kids are grown. It was harder when you got children and you got a husband and they're getting up early and you got to take care of them. So what does that mean? You either do it in the middle of the night or you just get up earlier. But you got to do it before you get busy. And you get quiet and you say, okay, Lord, I just want to sit in your presence. If you want to talk to me and say something great, even if you don't, I'm going to sit here in your presence. Now, this is what we're going to do. Get your journals out and get it ready. And you're going to ask the Lord one of three questions. Okay? Either is there something that from the word that you want to emphasize for me? Or I love this question, y'all. If you want to ask the Lord this question, Lord, how do you see me? Or you can use this question, Lord, is there something you want to tell me?